going to church. We call it worship. We do it through prayer. We do it through singing, reading the Bible, hearing sermons. Sometimes we do it alone too. We just pray to God. But looking up to God is all about God's ministry to us. It's about us being inspired by who God is and just being filled with His Spirit. But I think the second part, the maybe contrast or other part of God's ministering to us, is after we look up to God, to look out to the world. Looking out to the world is when we attend to our relationship with the world and those around us. And we have different words for it. We call it service, ministry, mission, being a missionary. We talk about it when we're feeding the hungry. We talk about it when we're preaching the gospel with our words, when we're being forgiving people. But it's kind of the opposite. Rather than God's ministry to us, it's kind of our ministry, or really God's ministry through us, to the world. And I think both of these are equally important. As Christians, we're not called to be completely looking up to God all the time at the exclusion of looking to the world and its needs, but we're also not called to look at the world and its needs to the exclusion of looking up to God for inspiration. And I think the problem is there's a lot of times when we do one to the exclusion of the other, when we forget about doing one because we're focusing too much on the other. I like to think of it maybe as an analogy of batteries. If we're all kind of walking around Duracell batteries, God is the person who can charge us up and give us the power we need to do work. And we need to be inspired and look up to God and get our power as little batteries. But if we never do any work, we're kind of useless batteries. So we need that charge, but we also need to be put to work so that we have meaning in life. Well, I think going back to why the angels asked the disciples, why are you looking to the sky? What they were doing was reminding the disciples that they needed to attend to this balance of the Christian lives. The disciples were looking up to God for inspiration, and rightly so, but they were starting to forget already that they had work to do. That it's not just about being inspired by God, but it's also about turning your heads down to the world and seeing where the world needs help. And I think that's why God reminded them right before He left, yes, you need to be inspired by me and have faith in me, but don't worry about when I'm going to return. Don't always be looking to the sky, because you live in the world now, and I have work for you to do now. And you need to also be looking to the world. I remember a story from my life when I feel like I didn't have the balance very well. I went to college and I studied philosophy, and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of something I like. But in philosophy you get to talk about ideas, and you don't really ever talk about very practical things. You're always talking about what is the meaning of life, what is it to be a good person. And I had a friend named Rachel who was also kind of into philosophy, but she also went to my church. So we would kind of not just talk philosophy in a secular way, but also talk about God and Christianity and theology and what is the church and what should the church be doing. So we were hanging out and doing this, talking about theology and having a good time. But eventually I remember stopping and saying, Rachel, I'm getting sick of talking. We're always talking about what God is and what God wants us to do and how we're not doing a good enough job. But we should stop talking and start doing. And Rachel looked at me and said, okay, then do it. And when she said that, I kind of paused and went, huh? And she said, good, you see what needs to be done? You have complaints on how we can do better? Good, then do it. And I remember when she told me, you do it. If you see something that needs to be done, you do it. It made me really pause. And I remember starting to come up with excuses. Well, I didn't have the leadership in the church that was leading me towards this. Well, I'm just one person. I can't do it all. I don't have the time. I don't have the money to do it myself. But as I stopped and thought about it, I realized that the reason I was uncomfortable with her saying, you do it, was because I didn't have a very good balance in my life about what it is to be a Christian. I was